Welcome to some tips and tricks that are going to save you so much time and resources. There's even one that can earn your guild almost unlimited components, at least a large quantity. Better jump onto this quick. Some of these tips and tricks will come and go as the sands shift, but you're at a huge disadvantage if you're not aware of them. So strap in. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think, because I know some people are going to hate these and some people will be so thankful. But ultimately, things only get done when they're known. You know what I mean? But I guarantee you will learn something new. But let's jump in to the tips and tricks for Dune Awakening Part 1. We're going to start off with the infinite component trick. You will need at least 2 players for this. It's worth noting you could line up a whole guild and get absolutely mind-bending amount of materials using this. It does work in the deep desert and in Hagga Basin, but do act fast, because I'm sure as the word gets out, it will be fixed, but it has been around for quite a while. It could even be intended functionality, I'm not certain, but let's get into it. But for example, if you dive in and decide to crack open any of the 3 compartments and you loot it, and you leave just 1 item in the inventory of the crash ship, your group or team will also then be able to come and loot the same compartment, having full loot. So basically you can double, triple loot all the crash ships using this method. You just need to leave 1 item in the inventory. So just give you an example of how it all works. Now, it's a little bit tricky because it requires 2 different people, but I'll show you exactly how it's done. This will also confirm that it's still working in the current version of the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to open each compartment, loot them all, but just leave 1 object in there. So leave that in there. Don't take all the items. And this will all make sense when we jump to the other perspective. So same again, open this compartment, just leave the last item in there. Same again for the 3rd compartment, loot everything in here, just leave 1 item. So this is what it looks like from the other player's perspective. This is a complete different character. We're going to run in and we can still loot. This is the exact same ship. And in this case, I even got a schematic. Now I'm just going to loot all. For whatever reason, it's bugged out a bit, but I'm able to loot it this way. Now this player will also need to leave 1 item in it for someone else or a 3rd or 4th person to then loot. So each time just leave 1 item each, and you should all be able to loot these as many possible times as you can, as many players as you have. I've tested this up to 6 players, so it pretty much will scale to as many people as long as every single person leaves 1 item in one of the compartments. You'll be sweet. They'll be able to tell if it's been looted by the animation between the full compartment and empty compartment. So if you see a crash ship on the ground, even if it looks like it's been looted, if you see any of the compartments that still look like this with the piping exposed, that means you can still go and loot it. But there you have it, a really interesting little tip that can earn your guild an insane amount of components. I know, I have tested it. It's crazy good. Farming crash ships works out to be very lucrative. The next super helpful trick will allow you to make a fair amount of extra coin, but it'll also just help preserve all your best weapons and armor. And I'll just give you a very quick demonstration, but this will most likely be fixed quite soon as it no longer works in the deep desert. It only works in Hagga Basin. But what we can do is we can grab a ton of these very well used items, and then all we need to do is build a container. The best one to build is just the storage container. All we're going to do is sort inventory by volume, just so we can just continue to tap E very quickly so we can get them all in there. Now that all the items are in the container, all we need to do is get out our construction tool, go down to demolish, hit demolish, unselect the tool, then press E, and then we're just going to drop the aluminium and the silicon blocks back into the inventory. Then we're going to hold our cursor over the right hand side in the container, hold E to take all, boom, it's taken all the things and it's left this stuff here. We'll pick this up soon. Then all we need to do is just go exit to main menu. Then we just need to wait for 30 seconds or thereabout. You can even just log off and then come back. Regardless of the amount of time, I think it will still just all repair the items. And then returning after around 30 seconds and opening the inventory, you'll note all the things that are in your inventory have been repaired to max durability. And this will tie in very, very nicely to a tip that we'll cover very soon, which will explain how to get the most out of this. It's worth noting, you can also perform the same repair trick on vehicle components, pretty much anything with durability, and it's just the same process. Put them in a container, delete the container, put all the items into your inventory, exit to main menu for 30 seconds, And once you're back into the game, you'll notice all your vehicle and components, anything with durability, will be, for whatever reason, set back to 100%. As long as it was in the container and you put it into your inventory, this will work. Now, I know, the first rule of the repair tricks is not to talk about it, in hopes that it just stays with us forever. But it's important to know because it has such big impact on PvP in my mind. Because if you're serious about PvP and you don't know about this trick, you will be definitely getting the field maintenance, gunsmith, garment keeper, and tailoring in order to preserve your gear. But currently, you don't need to run with this, which means it frees up to run more potent builds because you don't have to spend all those extra points trying to preserve your gear if you're doing lots of PvP combat. The implications for me personally are quite dramatic on the PvP side. That's why if someone knows about it, we all should know about it. Ultimately, it will get fixed at some point, but something you can just mistakenly do all the time without even realizing it. Now, this next tip is going to make you a ton of cash. Before you sell any items that you find within Hagga Base and Deep Desert, make sure you repair them because the resale value is determined by their durability. So if you use resources to repair them, you can flip them for so much more money. Here's an example. We're at the crossroads. Note these various prices for the vehicles. And if we sort it, we can see that these items are fetching an insanely good price and they're not even repaired. But as we go down, you can see that the Adept Carpov 38 has a value of 1,213. The Assault Ornithopter Engine Make 5 has a value of 1,302. If we quickly go to the Pinnacle Station and compare prices, the Pinnacle Station being in Jabal Efret Al Gahab, if we go to the vendor at Pinnacle Station, go to trade, go to sell, and we sort by price, you can see the insane difference of value between the two different merchants. Pinnacle favors all your weapons and armor, so make sure you always sell them at Pinnacle as you'll get so much more money, whereas your vehicle components will sell pretty much for dirt cheap. This little tip alone has made me so much cash, definitely worth knowing and being aware of this. So in summary, sell all your weapons and armor at Pinnacle Trade Post. All your vehicle components you want to sell at the Crossroads Trade Post. I promise you, if you repair them and sell them, you'll earn anywhere from 50 to 88% more Solari. Let's keep moving. If you ever go to a vendor and you can't sell any of the items, it means your inventory is full. You'll get this little red error at the bottom. All you need to do to remove that is to drop at least one item from your inventory. So you can see I've just dropped on the ground. And then it will allow me to sell all the different components. Quick little tip, just in case I've seen some people get a bit confused about that. This exact same rule applies for when you want to get your Lansraad rewards from one of the great houses. You need to ensure you have enough room within your inventory, because if you don't, you won't even see the option that says get reward or the relative message indicating that you've completed enough of the Lansraad to gain a reward from that house. So make sure you have enough inventory, otherwise you can't sell and you can't get your rewards from Lansraad. This next tip is handy if you're a new player and you're having some of your first experience with quicksand, or if you're making mad dashes in the PvP zone with one of the ground vehicles, or potentially even the Assault Ornithopter. Now, there is only a couple ways to recover your vehicle once it goes into the quicksand, and it will depend on what vehicle you have and how prepared you are. So if you're ever sketched out and worried about getting your buggy or bike stuck in the sand, here are some suggestions on how you can recover the vehicle if you act very quickly. For starters, if you're really worried and you're prepared, what I suggest to do is you get your welding torch out, you put it on to detach, then you jump onto your vehicle and hit enter. That way, as soon as we exit, we'll have the detach out. I'll just show you now. We'll exit and we're already set for detach. That's important because we need to act fast. And that's where this tip can come in handy in Deep Desert when you need to try to detach your vehicle very quickly. Now, this is by no means a guarantee, but I'll just quickly show you can recover your vehicle in certain instances if you do go into the quicksand. The key here is we're trying to not get the worm's attention too fast, so avoid the temptation of using any kind of suspensor belts. Just try jump if you're getting too bogged down. The idea is we're just detaching the vehicle as fast as we possibly can while keeping out of the sand ourselves just by jumping on the occasion. The worm will come quite quickly, so we have to act fast and we have to try dismantle the whole vehicle before the worm comes. As you can see here, we've completely got the vehicle out and now we can get to safety very quickly. Now, if you are prepared, you definitely want to have your Shiga wire claw or have your Bindu sprint in order to get away very quickly. But if you act fast, you can actually detach your vehicle and save it from the quicksand. Now, with your Ornithopter, it shouldn't be any real issue is if you do somehow get onto the quicksand, it can happily sit on top quite easily. The exact same method can be used for your sand bike. If you get into trouble, you would just jump off very quickly and restore it if you have nothing in the inventory. Otherwise, your best bet would be to do the same method, but you will probably lose all the inventory as you would just want to take it off and not even worry about having that on. Bikes do sink faster, so it is a little bit harder to do in time, but you can definitely certainly try recover it if you don't. This time I failed, but it can be done, but it does take a little bit more finesse. That's why in that very situation, the first thing I would do would be to jump off, repair out, and just take off the inventory. And then as quick as you can, try see if you can store your vehicle. And that way you can actually recover it that way. But you will lose your inventory. But I guess the key to this story is avoid quicksand as much as possible in Hagga Basin. It's a bit of a different story in the deep desert, but we'll come back to that soon. Now, when it comes to the quicksand within the deep desert, it's actually kind of a good zone to be in. If you're going to die in the quicksand. You're not going to lose your gear. And the best thing is you can't attract the worm when you're in quicksand in the deep desert. At least for the quicksand that connects the servers, these areas, you won't ever actually attract the worm. You can put your shield on and you'll have the worm sign, but the worm will never come. Quicksand, from what I've tested, will never seem to call the worm. So it's been a couple minutes, no worm sign. The worm won't come. If you do need to die, try dying quicksand within the deep desert. And this is why you see people get teleported to the quicksand when there's issues with the servers. It's also really important to understand that these quicksands that connect the servers, these will not sink your vehicle. You'll be able to drive over and transfer between servers with vehicles. You couldn't always do this, so this is a new thing, which is awesome. So now vehicles are much more possible. And the same worm interaction applies to vehicles in quicksand. We can pretty much drive on here, I think almost infinitely, and we shouldn't ever really trigger the worm. So something to pay a lot of attention to. If you're ever getting killed or shot down, try get to one of these areas and die. This is the best outcome. And you can't even use a thumper in quicksand, so it will always be the best place to try land in many scenarios. It is worth noting, sometimes it may appear like you've hit a wall. Just reverse and then try go at an angle and you should be able to get through to the other side, no worries. Here's a quick tip for the wreck of Limos within Hagga Basin, which is in the eastern shield wall. This location doesn't have any special uniques, so it's not oftenly visited. But there is one secret to this area where we land. We need to access the key that is at the back. Now, generally, you have to go through and cut these down to get into the key. But in case you don't know, you can also access it just by crouching near it and getting the band this way, avoiding the steps of having to cut through it. So do note, you can just access it this way. Saving you a ton of time as you can then just run in and grab all the good loot. It also works for the deep desert crash ships, so it pretty much works for all of them. If you ever go and delete your water containers, make sure you extract all the water out of them first. Because if you do delete this, all the water that's in this is obviously going to disappear instantly. It doesn't cycle into the other containers, it just disappears. So if I want to make sure that I get this 7,000 milliliters of water, I have to extract all, otherwise it'll be gone. So I'll just give you a quick example. Just going to extract some of it, but let's say 4,000 liters. Here we can see we have 4,000 liters. If we delete and we check here, you can see here we've lost that 4,000 milliliters of water as it's been directly deposited or directly stored in that container. Just something to be mindful of. Later in the game, it doesn't matter so much, but early on, or if you're building out in deep desert, this could be a brutal mistake to make. Some of you probably know this already, but this is just a handy little UI indicator of the Fremen death stills. If you're ever using lots of these and you're wondering which one is actually free to drop a corpse into, I didn't realize this for quite some time, but there's actually a very distinct animation. One with a body, one without a body. And not only that, if you watch this over time, you'll see the animation change from being completely full to the body nearly being fully processed. It's a little hint, I just wanted to mention this, is it's something I didn't notice straight away and could be helpful because before I was silly going into each of them and checking, whereas now it's a very clear indication. So another really good tip, if you're underleveled and you're trying to run some of the labs in the deep desert A-row and you're up against these guys, well, one tip is see how they have the weapon held in their right hand? Well, we can use this to our advantage in situations like this where we can get their weapon slightly to the left of an object, means we can get free range on their body. I'll try and give you an example right here, but you can see here how we pretty much have access to the whole body and we can fire at them, but we're pretty much blocking their range or their view of us. So you can always use the area. If you're in scenarios where it's just say a one-on-one or there's a couple of them, you can try take advantage of how they hold their weapons in their right hand. And you can use these objects to block their view while you have full view of them, making it much easier to tackle some of these harder bosses in the DD row. Particularly useful in research labs, but this will work anywhere. One thing you should always watch for is shadows. Shadows in Dune Awakening's Deep Desert have a much further rendering than the actual vehicles themselves. So if you're ever thinking there's enemies around, make sure you check for shadows. They will appear way before the vehicles themselves. Vehicles will render in at about 500 meters on max render distance. I believe bases are 1,000 meters. You should see them from quite further away than actual vehicles. Something worth noting. Now, many of you may know this already. This is a handy little feature that is never explained to you within the game. In any of the production related structures, you probably realize that you can press D to expand and then change the order of what you want to have currently in the queue. This is extremely helpful as a lot of the time we go and cancel, all the stuff falls on the ground and we have to pick it up or put it in a container again. However, if we're in this view and we want to do the same sort of thing, we simply hover over the icon, not the X, the icon. And if we click that icon, you can see it will switch the order of what we're queuing without dropping any of the materials on the ground. This is extremely handy as more people come and go Dune Awakening. It's well worth wherever you are to have your construction tool with you and just to walk around areas where there's lots of buildings just to see if any have been completely abandoned. If they've been abandoned, they won't have this yellow box around, which means you'll be able to go in there, either claim a sub-thief, put a sub-thief down, or just loot these bases. I just want to give you a quick example of what it looks like when you come across a base where players either left the server or abandoned their base. You'll get a blue little box, and this is going to tell us that we can claim this sub-thief and raid this base with no worries. You'll be able to go up to sub-thief, you can see we can claim ownership. It's been abandoned or the players left the server, allowing us to enter their chests and everything within that base. But before we do that, you can clearly see with a bit more ease and accuracy which ones you can loot and which ones you can't just by having the sub-thief console up. And make sure you have the advanced sub-thief console selected, as that will have a little bit more range on telling you where you can and can't build. So for a sub-thief to go down, for the most part, you have to wait until the taxes aren't paid for about 3 to 4 weeks, I think, or the deterioration of the foundation or part under it needs to go to 0. And the only way to loot bases now is for the sub-thief to be destroyed or removed. And what's really important to understand is when you're watching a base and the foundation that the sub-thief is sitting on is critical, you'll be surprised at how long it can stay at critical for. There does seem to be some kind of connection between the foundation under the sub-thief and the sub-thief's status, whether taxes have been paid or not. And here is a good example. Here we have the advanced sub-thief console and the foundation block. You can see how they're pretty much perfectly aligned in their health, where all the other pieces tend to have different values depending on their exposure to the storms and weather conditions. Further highlighting the point that there is some sort of synchronization between the foundation or whatever your sub-thief is sitting on and the tax cycle. So if I come back in, I believe 2-3 weeks, possibly 4, these pieces will be well and truly gone, but the sub-thief might just be hanging on along with the foundation block. And then finally, they will go into the status of wrecked. And this is the most critical state to find a base in, because generally I think it's about within a 6 to 12 hour period, that base will go down. So keep an eye out for bases on critical. Critical can still last for quite some time. I think I almost watched it for about a week. The status you're really looking for is wrecked. That is generally a 6 to 12 hour time frame. And another really interesting thing to think about is that the Coriolis storm doesn't actually do any damage to the buildings within Hagga Basin. The only thing that does damage are the regular storms. As far as my testing, the Coriolis storm does no damage. But let me know in the comments if you think otherwise. At least that's what I've gotten from my testing. If you've ever been struggling with dealing with multiple enemies in knife fights, then I have a really good tip that's just going to help you change any knife fight in the game versus NPCs into a gunfight. And all we need to do to change the NPCs into the gun animation is to jump onto someone where they can't reach us. So example, they're going to hit me with knives, I jump onto this table, turns into a gunfight. This is really helpful early on for new players, as adjusting to the combat and knife fighting can take a little bit of time. It's also worth noting that it's a really good idea to use this strategy if you're running light or heavy armor, because that way you'll play into your strength of your armor set as you take a lot less damage from darts. But there you go, you can even the odds and change any knife fight into a gunfight. Not to mention that it's a great time to use to heal up. It's just to jump onto a location, use your shield to soak up damage, and you can heal yourself and not have to worry about getting stabbed to death. In Dune Awakening, you can no longer kill people with your vehicle by simply running into them. You can't do it with the Buggy, with the Ornithopter. However, within Hagga Basin and in Deep Desert, you can still kill NPCs by running over them or just hitting them with your Ornithopter. Something worth noting, it can still be done. NPCs still take vehicle damage. This next tip is essential if you're a PvP player. We now have the option to hotkey the quick loot instead of it just being space. This is a very potent option to put onto a mouse key of some kind because what it allows for is looting while moving. Now this might not sound like a big deal, but the fact that you can now loot and move, particularly for the PvP style players, this can be a life-saving change as you're not just sitting there for a couple seconds. You can continuously move and loot now. Small tip, but it can have big impacts. Something worth considering. Now, this next tip is super helpful to get into Dune Awakening and not have to go through the Funcom launcher. So in this tip, we are skipping the Funcom launcher by simply using this launch option. I'll put this in the description, but the easiest way to get it is to right click on Dune Awakening within Steam, go browse local files. Then we want to click on Dune Sandbox, binaries, Win64, and we are copying this address, going back to Steam, right clicking on Dune Awakening, properties, launch options. Then we're going to drop it into the launch options. Just make sure you add the quotes. And most importantly, you need to add in Dune Sandbox _be.exe. This is just pointing it to the battleground exe, which is the one you need to launch the game successfully. Then we end the quotes. Then we add in this part here, which I'll put in the description. Make sure you check it, but you can almost copy paste, just change the directory as per your requirements. And then we can simply go play. Just have to click it once. And there we go. Bing Bada Boom, it launches without going through the Funcom launcher. This is not necessarily a tip, but it's just correcting some bad information that's circulating the Dune community. Currently in the game, if you get out your cutter array and get into your Buggy cutter array and start mining, you will notice a great efficiency will display as if you're using the cutter array itself. There's been posts and videos stating that this actually does something. It does not. It is a visual bug. It's important to understand this because the poor, good, and great efficiencies, they might even be excellent down the track, but these only apply to your cutter array. The only things that impact your vehicle cutter array is what Mark it is. So Mark 4 is going to yield less than your Mark 5, and your skills will impact your yield, as well as being able to mitigate heat, allowing you to mine more nodes in a short amount of time. So just keep in mind, if anyone tells you that if you get your cutter array out and jumps into your buggy and start mining, that it does anything, it does not. It's a leftover bug, will be resolved at some point. The poor, good, and great efficiencies only apply to your cutter arrays. Now, there's only a few locations within Dune Awakening where you ever need a torch, and you do get the torch that you can attach to your belt, which you can flick on and off whenever you need it. So this tip isn't so helpful, but it's good to know. If you're ever in the dark and you have no light, but you have a construction tool, you can whip that out. And as long as you have one of the building sets that has any kind of lamp, light, whatever it is, you can run around in dark places with the light selected and it will provide a headlight illuminating the surrounding area. This can be very helpful in a dire situation. But again, not so often you'll need this, but it's good to know. Construction tool, light selected, will provide actual light. This tip is for new players who only have access to the small storage chest and you haven't unlocked the normal chest, and that is to use your recycler as a storage chest. It is great early on for storing light items like gear, as you have 20 slots. It only has a volume of 100, but the small storage chest only has 10 slots with 250 volume. So it is a bit better at storing the various items in terms of weight, but recycler you can't beat early on in terms of actually using it to store things like clothing, schematics, and other light items. The recycler only costs 30 copper ingots, so you can get away with building quite a few of these early on if you need to. This next one is super simple. I still see people arriving at Harko village, running all the way down to the marketplace, to the Chone bank, or to pay taxes, and then they run all the way back here. But did you know you can also exit Harko village out through the back here? This little tip will just save you a little bit of time, as you can very easily exit through the back, through the force field, and get out this way. Now, Arakeen doesn't have this option, but at Harko Village, you do have 2 exit ways. So you can travel to the world map through the back. Simple, but very handy to know. I didn't realize this for quite some time, so this may be helpful for some that don't know about it. In the deep desert Aero, we have the taxi service. These guys are scattered all across Aero, near each spawn. They can pretty much fly you anywhere, but the main thing, but a really important thing these guys offer is a safe spot to research your schematics. So you can drop by these guys, research them. This way you are saving them. This can be very handy before entering a PvP zone, and it's just worth noting. So quick little tip there, taxi services do provide a safe area for you to redeem your schematics. Great if you're just running in and don't have a base set up. Another little tip you may not know about. When you go and visit any of your water structures, you have your loadout and backpack. You can actually switch containers and items between your loadout and backpack in this menu. So for instance, this is my loadout. If I then switch some water in, go back to inventory, you'll note the transfer of items. But something interesting to note, this will work for all water cisterns, blood purifiers. So those are all the tips for part 1. There is many, many more to come. I just didn't want to put them all in one video and stretch it out to be too long. But let me know in the comments what you thought. Definitely let me know if you've got any cool tips and tricks, as even with the insane amount of time I spent in this game, I'm still learning new things. Always good to know more and share. Thanks very much for your time and watching. Hopefully you got something useful. Fair call if you didn't, but thanks very much. Consider liking, subscribing. Thanks again, and peace out.